Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well today and welcome back to FMDataLab. Today I'm going to cover some of the new features that I've implemented to FMDataLab since its release. So let's start with the biggest feature, shall we, and that's the functionality to be able to edit the attribute weights for each role for the player role scoring calculation. So in my previous video I went over how the default role scores are calculated, so I suggest I give that a quick watch just for the context of what these weights actually mean. With the FMDataLab attribute weighting functionality, you can now update the weights of attributes for each of the 117 roles used in the role scoring calculation. Just perfect for whenever you want to adjust the importance of certain attributes when it comes to the role scoring calculation, whether it may be that you want to put more or less importance on an attribute. This is the functionality for you. Let's get into the action, shall we? So let's navigate to the new attribute weights page, which is in the dashboard up here, and you can click on attribute weights. Once you have navigated to the attribute weights page, you will be presented with this drop down, and you can search for all 117 roles, just in alphabetical order. So let's search for the poacher role as we did in the last video. Once you select a role, you'll be brought to this new screen which lays out all of the attributes and their weights for the selected role. Attributes are divided into technical, mental and physical attributes, just like they are in Football Manager, but we also have this computed feat attribute, which I did talk about in the last video, but essentially is a player's proficiency with both of their feet. Each attribute can be weighted between 0 and 100. The higher the number you assign to an attribute value, the greater the weight it will have in the role scoring calculation. So if you use the finishing attribute here, you might determine that finishing is more important for poachers, so we can up this to 100. On the flip side, you may determine that you don't really care about a poacher's two-footedness, so you can drop this feet attribute down to 0. Or you can put it to 4.2 if you wanted, or 10, but I'm just going to set it to 0. Now see here, as I've updated the weights, this little icon appears, and if we hover over it, a little tooltip pops up, and it details that you've updated this attribute weights value from the default. So we can see we've updated to 100, but the default weight is 80. Once you're happy with the weights you've updated for a given role, you can click on this update role weights button, and this will save your attribute weights to your browser. It's important to note here that the weights are stored in your browser and not in a external database. So opening the website up on another device or another browser, your updates won't be persisted. Again, we can see the same little icon here in the tooltip. Here details all of the role weights that you've updated. So we updated the poacher role there, and you can click on any of these roles to open up the edit weight screen for the selected role. If you wish to reset a single role attribute weights back to the default, when viewing a attribute weight here as we are, you can click on the reset role weights button, and this resets the role attributes back to the default weights. So you can see that as we do here, we click, we'll get a little confirmation where it'll pop up, click it again, and there we go, back to default. You can see finishing's gone back to 80 and feet back to 20. So I'm just going to update these back once again. And I'm also going to update another role, so I'm just going to select ball winning midfielder in the defend duty. And I'm just going to update some arbitrary weight values here. It doesn't really matter, so I'm going to update that. We go over this tooltip again. You can see that ball winning midfielder and poacher have both been updated. You might want to completely reset. You can do this reset all role weights button. Again, you'll be given a confirmation modal, and you can click on this confirm button here. And this will reset everything. You can see the tooltips disappeared, and we can go back to poacher, and you can see finishing is back to 80. Feet's back to 20, and the same can be said for the ball winning midfielder. I actually forget everything I updated, but I know finishing was one of them. But yeah, you can sort of see there. So let's see how this updates the role scores. So if we select our file here, and let's look at Lionel Messi, his attacking midfielder support role score is 16.1. So let's update this one. So you can see here on the table view, you now have this edit role weights button, which opens up the same sort of view, but just in a dialogue form instead of a whole page. The only real difference here is from the select role dropdown, it just has the roles that you selected from the role selection screen. So you don't see all 117 roles, just the roles that you've selected. So let's take the attacking midfielder support role, click on it, and let's update some values. So again, arbitrary values. So you see I've updated a number of attributes here with the little icons. I've removed some, I've upped some, I've reduced some. And so I'm going to update the role weights. Now it's going to update in the background. You can see here that the table sort of loading. It might take a second. This is a big file. It's almost 5,000 players. So it might take a little minute to update. So you can see here I've updated the attacking midfielder support role. And I'm just going to close. So you can see here now on the attacking midfielder support column, that we have this icon again, and if you hover over it, it not only tells you that yes, I've updated this role attribute weights, but also gives you which attributes you've actually updated to give you a bit of context. So also you can see here that Messi's scores went up from 16.1 to 16.2. So you can play around with these to your heart's content, maybe find what works for you, maybe just for certain roles you maybe don't care about certain attributes, maybe there's certain attributes that don't give any weight on roles and you might want that. So this gives you the opportunity, the flexibility to tailor it just for you. So just before I go on to the next one, I sort of forgot about this part. So in the role selection drop down on the attribute weights screen, whenever you have updated a role's attribute weights, the option label in the drop down has this little warning emoji. So I updated the anchor there, for example, so you can see here on this one, you see I've done anchor and poacher. So if I search for poacher, you can also see it there. And it's not going to appear in any of the other ones, just those two. So the next update I've added is how the best role columns work. So previously there was 2 best role columns, and those columns would include roles just from the role selection screen. So if you select the 4 roles, it's only going to show you those 4 roles and for the best overall role or the best role for the position. But now it includes all 117 roles. So now you can determine the best role score from all of the roles and not just the ones you selected. So I've kept that functionality of only showing the roles from the role selection screen on a new column called best role, and then select the roles in parentheses. So this new column only includes the best roles from the roles that you've selected. So if you only want to check any given player's best role from within the context of the roles you selected, you can use that column. But the other 2 columns now just use from every single role. So let's go see this in action. So you can see here for Messi, his best role for his position is a trequartista forward in the attacking duty. His overall best role is also the same. For De Bruyne, his best role for his position is inverted winger support. But for his overall best role is regista, which is in support duty, which is also a defensive midfielder role, even though he's not a defensive midfielder, but it's more like a play-making defensive midfielder, so that sort of makes sense for how De Bruyne plays. But you can see here, we go back to our roles, that I don't have trequartista or regista selected. So previously you would only have seen either one of these roles in those columns, but now it includes every single one of the roles. So we also have this new column, the best role for the selected roles, and this works how the overall best role used to work. It only shows roles from the roles you've selected from the role selection screen. So Messi's best role from the selected roles I've added is attacking midfielder support. So there is the good and the bad now that we're calculating all 117 roles. We'll start off with the bad news, shall we? The bad news is that for these sort of larger files, you see here, I almost have 5,000 players. That will take a little bit longer because before it was doing a max 17 calculations for each of the players, and now it's doing 117 for each of the players, so it sort of takes significant computation to do that in comparison to what it used to be. The good news is if you go here to the player panel, there's a lot more context in relation to the role scores. So we can down here, we can see in the roles section that we have for all the positions, each of the 117 roles. And not only does it have the role, it also has the score for the role and also its overall rank for that player. So I've also added this little visual context as to whether the player can actually play in either of these positions. So obviously De Bruyne isn't a goalkeeper, can't play a goalkeeper, and we have this dash border which is now in a red, and we have this X icon and a tooltip to stipulate that yes, Kevin De Bruyne cannot play in the goalkeeper position, can't play centre back, can't play full back, can't play wing back, can't play defensive midfielder. But as mentioned before, his best role score is for regista, and it's funny that his second best defensive midfielder role is the 32nd ranked. So there's something about regista that sort of it favours the attribute values that he has. So he can't play as a centre midfielder, and it has this little green dash border and then a green check mark to say yes, Kevin De Bruyne can play as a centre midfielder, and his third best role is Mazzala. And then wide midfielder, his second best role overall is inverted winger support. Keeping on the topic of the best role columns, I've added the functionality to sort and filter on those columns. So before you could, filtering sort of didn't work very well, and there was no sorting. So let's go have a look at this one again. So you can sort. So if you it'll automatically go to descending, so it takes the highest role from all the players. So that's Messi, his trequartista forward is 17.59, and it goes down in descending order. And then you can switch it and go ascending. You sort of see here that this player here, I don't know, his rating must not have come through. I don't know what's happening. Let's have a look. Yeah, oh, he's all ones. Wow, okay, that is strange. Okay, I've never seen that. Who is this player? My God. We usually play Water FC. We're just not used to playing on land. You can do that for all of these roles. You can do it for the selected roles and of the overall best roles, which, you know, is still the same for Messi. So as mentioned, you can also filter, and the way the filtering works is not a text field, it's a drop down, so you can select. So maybe I want to find all players whose best role for the position is poacher. We've got 471 of those. We also maybe want to look for maybe target forward in the attacking duty. So let's add a few more on there. So you can have a look at those and then you can sort as well. So the next piece of functionality I worked on was, I'm sure some of you might be happy with, is I've removed the max role selection restrictions. So obviously now that I'm calculating all 117 roles, there's no reason to restrict you to 11. You can go to the role selection page and you can click on this select all and select all of them. Now this is chaos. You can do this, I mean, I will actually show you what it looks like. So you will be scrolling for quite a while, but if you want all that context, it is there. You're free to play around with it. As mentioned before, you can also just go into the player screen panel over here and you can still see all of these rules. And the next feature I worked on is a replace file function. So now instead of, for example, if you hit the max limit of 12 files, instead of having to delete a file and then re-upload a file, you can now just select to replace a file. So I can sort of show you that. I'm not actually going to do it, but I can sort of show you how it works. So you click on the action menu and now there's this new option to replace file. This will open up this dialog and then you can just choose the file and then you click replace file and it will just replace the file that's currently there. So I have this player search 2024 HTML file. It will replace it with whatever file you select. So the next feature I worked on is one that I only noticed as a sort of an issue once I actually started using the web app myself for my save, and that is being able to copy a player's name to your clipboard. So before, what would have happened, I can maybe still show this. It wouldn't happen every time, but it would happen for most people. If you wanted just to select Kevin De Bruyne, you would do this here and it would open up this panel, which is a little bit annoying. You're having to keep doing that. So now you can just click on this icon, this little clipboard icon, and it'll copy Lionel Messi to your clipboard. So you can sort of, I'm just going to just paste. It's also available in the panel for the player. It's up here, just beside their name in the top left. And you click here, it's going to copy Kevin De Bruyne and just show you Kevin De Bruyne. There you go. So the last piece of, well, actually it was more of a bug fix more than anything, was that previously when you start adding filters, and once you start sorting, it would update the URL, which it still does, but the way it worked was it updated the browser history as well. So when you hit the sort of back button on your browser, it would remove this sort, and it would remove this one, then it would remove this one. And so if you added just like 15 different filters and sorts, it would take you, 15, 16 steps to get back to the player screen. But now, if you just hit the back button, it will automatically bring you back to the My Files page. So that's all of the new features I've added. I hope you all enjoy them and get the most out of them as you can. If you have any feedback or any more features you'd like, or if you find any bugs with some of the new stuff I've added, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye for now.